step into the world of a jack of all trades, where I know a little bit about a lot of things. It is here that I will show you what it is like to be a master of none. We'll start off taking a look at a blanket chest that I made for the front entryway of our home. I made it mainly out of pine and cedar, so let's take a look at how I go about choosing the project and some of the issues I ran into along the way. I made this project out of a book called The Country Projects for Woodworkers. It was copyrighted in 1988 by Madrigal Publishing Company. When I was looking through it, I found this blanket chest. It reminded me of an old cedar chest, which is what it was in the description on the text side of the book. I didn't have enough cedar to line the interior with cedar, which is how a cedar chest is traditionally made. So I was trying to incorporate cedar in certain areas of the project instead. When you're looking into choosing a project, one important thing to note is the materials needed or available. So again, my boards were large enough for the pine sections, but I didn't have enough of the cedar boards to do as much large work. Cedar is also not as structurally sound as pine. So if you made this all out of cedar, it would be a pretty soft bench and be pretty prone to nicks and dents and damage. The right skill level. When you're choosing a project that's outside of your skill level, you need to be cautious of what parts of the project are outside your skill level. Most of this project was within my skill level in terms of the joinery used. I have done doweling and some of the other types of lap joints and butt joints, like these miters on the base. But overall, my challenge was going to be in redimensioning the project, and that turned out to cause a few problems in the long run. So to me, having the correct source means how much information does the source provide. These books provide construction instructions as well as all of the dimensions and all of the plans that you're going to need for the project. And oftentimes what I do is I just throw the book on a copier and then I print off the pages so that I can write on them. And just for future reference, the top looks pretty good in terms of contrasting the cedar and the pine, so you can get a good look when we go into it further as to what parts of the bench are made out of cedar and what parts are made out of pine. Here you can kind of see the feat that I had to make to adapt the base of the bench. It ended up working out pretty well with the cedar in terms of having the contour looking pretty nice and working out pretty well. But I did end up with these posts or feet attachments kind of sticking out quite a bit. So it took a lot of sanding to get these sanded down to being flush and even with the rest of the bench. And the main portion of my project issue came from those little pine squares in the corner. So those were the ones that I had cut 1 inch too short or a half an inch too short. And but it was also beveled at a 45-degree angle. So I think it was a half inch on the top and a full inch on the base, something like that. So now, as I just scroll through a couple of the finished pictures of the bench, I just wanted to talk a little bit about what my takeaway was from this project. A lot of it, in terms of my biggest lesson learned, was when you're redimensioning things, it's important, one, to have that good plan with a good source, but also measure twice, cut once, sort of rule of thumb. We all know it. We've heard it a bunch of times. And but then once I've made the mistake, rather than, I don't have the material, or I didn't have the material at the time to remake the base of the bench. So I had long, skinny pieces of cedar, which is why I used them for these accent pieces. And then I had large 1x12s of pine. So I was able to use pine in the larger areas like the body of the bench, etc. it was salvage the project and all of its components rather than just scrapping the baseboard and cutting out a new baseboard for it. Overall, I ended up liking this project and how it turned out. Like I said, I had some bigger dreams for it in terms of how the top was going to be a little bit more structurally sound, but there are joints that I know of now, like little tongue and groove joints that I could have slotted those two together with. Doing the top, that definitely could have used more of a craftsman's touch just to make it more structurally sound since it is more aesthetic. So when you're trying to get an aesthetic look out of things, just be mindful that sometimes you are sacrificing functionality or even strength. So thanks guys for checking out my first video. As I keep working through it, I'll be incorporating more videos into my projects. It's just when I started this idea, I just didn't have a video camera, or I wasn't much into taking videos of my things. But there are some projects down the line that I have a video of, so we'll be able to see that coming up in the future as well. Alright,